The wedding of the year was supposed to be Margaret Almeida's coronation, the day she would finally erase her son's shameful past and cement the family empire she had spent decades building. Every detail had been orchestrated with military precision, from flowers imported from the Netherlands to champagne that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a month. Margaret invited 200 of the city's most influential people, hired the finest catering service, and personally selected every floral arrangement. But there was one last touch of cruelty in Margaret's perfect plan. She wanted to invite her son's ex-girlfriend, the girl she had driven out of his life 3 years earlier, just to see her sitting in the very back of the church, forced to watch her son marry someone from the elite. Margaret wanted a witness to her triumph, someone to confirm that she had always been right. Instead, she invited a catastrophe that would shatter her perfect world into 1,000 irreparable pieces. When the church doors opened, the ex-girlfriend didn't walk in broken and defeated. She walked in carrying a secret that would turn a wedding into a funeral for Margaret's carefully constructed lies. And what happened next would become the most talked about scandal in the city's history. This is the story of how one woman's arrogance became her complete and total destruction. If you love karma stories, revenge and justice served ice cold, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another dramatic story like this. Now, let's dive in. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, sliding through the apartment mailbox like a serpent entering paradise. Laura Santos stood in the small kitchen, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips, staring at the cream-colored envelope resting on the worn doormat. The paper was expensive, the kind that whispered old money and exclusivity. Her name was written in golden calligraphy, so perfect. It looked printed, but Laura knew it wasn't. Margaret Almeida would never use printed labels for something like this. Every insult had to be handcrafted. Laura's hands trembled slightly as she bent down to pick it up. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she'd heard the name Almeida. 3 years since she'd walked away from the only man she had ever loved, because his mother made it clear that a girl from the wrong side of town would never be good enough for her precious son. 3 years since the night Raphael sat across from her in this same kitchen, tears streaming down his face, and said he couldn't fight his mother anymore. Laura remembered every word of that conversation, every crack in his voice when he said he loved her, but love wasn't enough. His mother controlled everything, the family company, his trust fund, his entire future, and she had issued an ultimatum: marry someone suitable, or be completely disinherited. Laura had understood. She even told him it was okay, that she didn't blame him. But inside, her heart turned to dust. What she didn't tell him, what she couldn't tell him because by then his number was blocked and his mother made sure Laura had no way to reach him, was that she was pregnant. 6 weeks pregnant, with twins. Now, holding that invitation, Laura felt an icy fury settle into her bones. She opened the envelope carefully and pulled out the thick card. Rafael Almeida and Camila Ferreira request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony. The date was set for 2 months from now. At the bottom, in Margaret's unmistakable handwriting, there was a personal note. Dear Laura, I thought you should see what happens to people who know their place. Do come. We saved you a seat where you belong, right in the back. Sincerely, Margaret Almeida. The invitation wasn't just an insult. It was a calculated attack designed to make Laura feel small, designed to remind her that she had lost, and Margaret had won. But Margaret Almeida made one critical mistake. She poked a mother bear who had spent 3 years rebuilding herself from nothing. And that mother bear had claws. Laura walked to the door of the second bedroom in her modest apartment. Inside, 2 identical 3-year-old boys were still sleeping, curled together on a twin bed like puppies. They had Raphael's dark hair, his strong jaw, his deep brown eyes that looked like they could see right through you. But they had Laura's determination, her fire, her refusal to give up even when the world told her she should. Pedro stirred first, his tiny hand automatically reaching to make sure his brother was still there. Then Lucas's eyes opened, and within seconds both boys were awake, talking in the private language twins sometimes share. "Mom," Lucas called when he saw her at the door. His face opened into a sunshine smile that made Laura's chest tighten. "Are we having pancakes?" "Not today, love," Laura said, stepping inside and sitting on the edge of the bed. "Today we're going shopping." Pedro's eyes widened. "For toys?" "For something better," Laura said, smoothing their identical messy hair. "For fancy clothes. Because we're going to a party. A very, very important party." Over the next 8 weeks, Laura worked with a focus that bordered on obsession. She had built a good life for herself and the boys, working as a senior architect at a mid-sized firm while finishing her master's degree at night. She did it all without a single cent from the Almeidas, fueled by spite and maternal instinct in equal measure. But now she needed more than stability. She needed to look like she had never needed them. Her best friend Julia, who worked in fashion PR, helped her find the perfect dress. Midnight blue silk that fell like water, elegant but effortless, expensive but not flashy. The kind of dress that whispered confidence instead of screaming for attention. For the boys, she found matching charcoal grey suits with tiny bow ties that made them look like miniature gentlemen. The day before the wedding, Laura took the boys to her parents' house. Her father, a retired mailman, stared at the fancy invitation on the kitchen table and shook his head. "Are you sure about this, sweetheart? You don't owe those people anything." "This isn't about them, Dad," Laura said calmly, watching her sons play with their grandfather's old chess set in the living room. "This is about Pedro and Lucas. They deserve to know where they come from, even if where they come from tried to throw us away like trash." Her mother, always practical, handed her a folder. "I made copies," she said. "Birth certificates, the DNA test results you did last year, medical records, everything. If that witch tries to claim those boys aren't Almeidas, you show her this." Laura hugged her mother tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume and feeling, just for a moment, like the scared 22-year-old girl again, instead of the woman she had become. Then she straightened her shoulders, kissed her parents, and went home to prepare for war. The wedding morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect weather that felt specifically designed to mock the chaos about to unfold. Laura dressed carefully, applying her makeup with precision, styling her hair into a sleek bun that highlighted the delicate gold earrings she had bought for the occasion. When she helped Pedro and Lucas into their tiny suits, both boys seemed to sense something important was happening. They stood unusually still while she tied their bow ties and combed their hair. "You look like little princes," Laura told them, her voice thick with emotion. "Do you remember what Mommy said about today?" "We're going to meet someone," Pedro said seriously. "Someone who looks like us." "That's right," Laura confirmed. "And no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, I want you to remember you are smart, you are loved, and you are exactly who you're meant to be." "Okay?" "Okay, Mommy," the boys answered in unison. The drive to the Almeida estate took 45 minutes, each kilometre carrying Laura farther from the modest neighbourhood where she had built her life, and closer to the world that had rejected her. The estate was exactly as she remembered, sprawling and ostentatious, with perfectly manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain each month than Laura's rent. The gates were open, valets directing arriving guests toward the parking area. Laura's sensible sedan looked painfully out of place among the Mercedes and BMWs, but she kept her head high as she pulled in. A valet approached, his professional smile faltering slightly when he saw her car. Laura could read his thoughts as clearly as if he'd said them aloud. She must be lost. "Welcome to the Almeida wedding," the valet said, his tone slightly condescending. "If you're with the catering staff, The service entrance is in the back. I'm a guest, Laura said coldly, stepping out in her silk dress and heels. The valet's eyes widened slightly as she walked around to open the back door, revealing two perfectly dressed little boys who were clearly not catering staff. Pedro and Lucas climbed out carefully, remembering Laura's instructions about keeping their suits clean. Each boy took one of Laura's hands, and together they walked toward the entrance of the enormous white tent erected behind the main house. Laura could feel eyes on them immediately. Guests in expensive outfits turned to stare, their conversations dying mid-sentence. She knew what they saw, a young woman who was clearly beautiful but didn't quite belong, and two little boys who looked strangely, impossibly familiar. Inside the tent, the setup was breathtaking. White roses and orchids everywhere, woven through airy fabric that caught the light like morning mist. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, scattering rainbow reflections over the gathered guests. The chairs were white with gold ribbons, arranged in perfect rows leading to an altar drenched in more flowers than Laura had ever seen in one place. At the front, she could see Raphael standing with his groomsmen. Even from the back of the tent, she could see how handsome he looked in his tuxedo, how he nervously adjusted his bow tie. He looked older, more serious, but still, fundamentally, the same man she had loved. The same man who had chosen his trust fund over their future. Margareth Almeida held court near the front row, radiant in a silver gown that probably cost more than a car. She was laughing at something one of her society friends had said, her head thrown back, every inch the triumphant queen of her domain. She hadn't noticed Laura yet. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 15 minutes. An assistant, young and overly polished, approached Laura with a professional smile. "Good afternoon, bride, or groom." "Groom," Laura said calmly. The assistant glanced at his seating list. "I don't see your name. Are you sure you RSVP'd?" "I received a personal invitation from Mrs. Margareth Almeida," Laura replied, her voice carrying just enough to make nearby guests turn and look. The assistant's smile tightened. "I see. Well, let me just check with..." He stopped when his eyes landed on Pedro and Lucas for the first time. Really landed on them, taking in their faces, their eyes, the unmistakable resemblance to the groom at the altar. The assistant went pale. "My God," he whispered. "Exactly," Laura said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Now, I believe Mrs. Almeida mentioned something about a seat in the back." The assistant stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. I'll just..." he stammered, and then fled toward the front of the tent. Laura watched him go, watched him lean down and whisper frantically into Margareth's ear. She saw Margareth's head whip around, saw the moment those cold blue eyes locked onto her. The colour drained from Margareth's face so fast Laura thought she might faint. It was pure, undiluted horror, the expression of someone watching a carefully built house of cards begin to collapse. Good, Laura thought savagely. Let it begin. Margareth Almeida recovered quickly, decades of social training snapping into place like armour. She said something sharp to the assistant, who hurried off, then rose from her seat with the grace of a panther preparing to attack. Laura watched her move through the crowd, cutting toward the back with determined steps. Their eyes met across the sea of white chairs and curious guests. In that moment, 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. Accusations, justifications, and the bitter truth that they were about to have a confrontation 3 years in the making. Margareth reached Laura, and up close, Laura could see the barely contained fury in her eyes. And she could see something else. Fear. "Miss Santos," Margareth said, her voice low and venomous. "What a surprise. I didn't expect you to actually accept my invitation." "Your invitation was very persuasive," Laura replied evenly. "I thought it would be rude not to come. And of course," she added, "I had to bring Raphael's children." The word children dropped like a bomb. Several nearby guests audibly gasped. Margaret's jaw clenched so hard Laura could see the muscle jump in her cheek. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Margaret hissed. "If you think you can come here with some ridiculous claim—" "These aren't claims, Mrs. Almeida," Laura said, calm but loud enough to be heard. "These are facts. Meet Pedro and Lucas. They turned 4 last month." She gestured to the boys, who stared at Margaret with wide, curious eyes. The resemblance to Raphael was so strong it was almost unnatural, like someone had taken childhood photos of him and brought them to life. Margaret's face flickered through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, anger, calculation. Her hand flew to her chest, gripping the pearls around her neck as if they could anchor her to reality. "You," she began, her voice trembling. "You will leave immediately, or I will have security remove you." "On what grounds?" Laura challenged. "I was invited. I have the invitation with me if you'd like to see it. Your handwriting is quite distinctive." A murmur spread through the crowd now, rippling outward from their confrontation like waves from a stone thrown into still water. Guests were pulling out their phones, some already texting or recording. The digital age meant whatever happened here would be immortalized forever. Margaret seemed to realize that. Her expression shifted again, turning pleading, almost desperate. "Laura," she said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Please, don't do this. Not here. Not today." "You invited me here to humiliate me," Laura said calmly, leaning in so only Margaret could hear. "You wanted me sitting in the back, watching your son marry someone you deemed worthy. You wanted to rub my face in what I lost. But you made a mistake, Margaret. You forgot that actions have consequences." Before Margaret could respond, a commotion at the front of the tent drew everyone's attention. Raphael had noticed the disturbance. He was staring toward the back, confused, trying to see what was causing the hostile interruption. Then the crowd parted slightly, and he saw her. Laura watched Raphael's face change in real time, first confusion, then recognition, then shock so profound he actually staggered backward. His best man grabbed his arm to steady him. Raphael's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out, but his eyes, those deep brown eyes Laura once loved so much, were locked on the 2 little boys holding her hands. Boys who had his face, his eyes, everything. The soft music, playing in the background, stopped abruptly. The officiant at the altar looked around, confused. The guests, sensing drama of the highest order, fell nearly silent, leaning forward in their seats. Laura took a deep breath, tightened her grip on her son's hands, and began walking down the center aisle. Not toward the back, where Margaret intended to shame her, but straight to the front, straight toward Raphael, straight toward the truth that had been buried for 3 years. Her heels clicked against the temporary floor laid over the grass. Click, click, click. Each step was a statement. Each step was justice. Margaret tried to grab her arm as she passed, but Laura gently pulled away. Pedro and Lucas walked beside their mother with perfect composure, their little faces serious and confident. Raphael stepped down from the altar platform, nearly stumbling on the steps. He moved toward them as if pulled by an invisible cord, his face a mask of confusion and dawning understanding. They met in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, sunlight streaming through the translucent tent walls like a spotlight on a stage. "Laura," Raphael breathed. His voice was hoarse, broken. "What? How? Hello, Raphael," Laura said calmly. "I got an invitation from your mother. I thought it was only fair to accept. And I thought you should finally meet your children. Pedro, Lucas, this is Raphael." Raphael's eyes filled with tears. He dropped to his knees right there in the aisle, bringing himself level with the boys. Pedro and Lucas looked at him with the blunt, assessing stare children have, the kind that feels like it sees straight into your soul. "You look like us," Lucas observed matter-of-factly. Raphael made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I do, don't I? His hands reached out, then hesitated, hovering in the air. Can I? The boys looked to Laura for permission. She gave a small nod, and Lucas stepped forward, letting Raphael touch his face gently, reverently, as if he were made of glass. Pedro stayed a little more cautious, closer to Laura. How old? Raphael asked, his voice cracking. 4, Laura said. They turned 4 last month, March 15th. Raphael did the math quickly, his face going even paler as realization hit. You were, when we... He couldn't finish. 6 weeks pregnant when you told me to leave, Laura confirmed. I tried to tell you. I called your phone. I called the estate. I sent letters. Your mother made sure none of them reached you. She told me if I tried to contact you again, she would destroy me. The crowd erupted into gasps and whispers. Phones were everywhere now, recording every second. Raphael turned sharply to look at his mother. Margaret stood frozen, her face a mask of aristocratic disdain, but her hands were trembling. Raphael stared at her with such raw betrayal that several guests visibly flinched. Mom, Raphael said, his voice dangerously quiet. Tell me she's lying. Tell me you didn't do this. Margaret lifted her chin, defiant. I did what was necessary to protect you from a mistake that would have ruined your life. I did what any mother would do. You hid my children from me, Raphael roared, his voice echoing through the tent. He rose, his whole body shaking with rage. You made me believe she just moved on, that she forgot me. You told me she found someone else right away. I believed you, Mom. I trusted you. And all this time, I had children. I had a family. And you stole them from me. Raphael... Margaret stepped forward, reaching for him. Don't touch me, Raphael said flatly, cold. He turned back to Laura and the boys, tears streaking his face. I didn't know, he said to Laura, voice breaking. God, Laura, I swear I didn't know. If I knew, if I had the slightest idea. I know, Laura said softly. And that's why I'm here. Not to stop your wedding, not to ruin your life. I built my own life, Raphael. A good one. The boys are happy, healthy, and loved. But your mother sent me an invitation to mock me, to show me you moved on with someone more suitable. So I decided to show her exactly what she cost you. What she cost all of us. At that moment, a new voice cut through the charged air. What the hell is going on? Camilla Ferreira, the bride, had emerged from the adjoining bridal suite. She was a vision in white lace and silk, dark hair, pinned in an elaborate style, makeup flawless. She looked like a fairy tale princess, until she saw the scene. Camilla's eyes went from Raphael kneeling to Laura standing tall, to the 2 little boys who were unmistakably, painfully, Raphael's children. Her bouquet slipped from her hands, hitting the ground with a soft thud. Raphael, she said, voice sharp and strained. Who are they? Camilla, Raphael began, standing but struggling to form words. These are my children, he finally managed. I just found out. Camilla's face broke. She looked from Raphael to Margaret, then back to Laura. You knew? She asked Margaret, voice rising. You knew he had children, and you let us. The wedding is over, Camilla announced, her voice ringing clear through the tent. She turned on her heel and marched back toward the bridal suite, veil trailing behind her across the grass. Her maid of honor and bridesmaids hurried after her, throwing stunned looks, back at the chaos. The guests exploded into full-blown frenzy now, everyone talking at once. Some stood, trying to see better. Others typed furiously on their phones. This would be all over social media within minutes. Margaret snapped out of her shocked paralysis. "Security!" she shouted. "Remove this woman immediately! She's trespassing. She's disrupting a private event." "I'm not going anywhere," Laura said calmly. "And if you want to talk about disruption, maybe we should talk about how you illegally accessed my medical records 3 years ago." She pulled a folder from her small clutch. Somehow she'd carried it the whole time and held it up. "I have documentation proving you bribed a records employee at the hospital where I had my prenatal care. You knew about the twins from my first ultrasound, Margaret. You knew, and you deliberately kept that information from your son so he would go through with this wedding to merge the Almeida and Ferreira fortunes." Raphael turned to his mother. If he had looked betrayed before, now he looked utterly shattered. "You knew?" he whispered. "From the beginning. You let me walk away from the woman I loved, from the mother of my children, and you knew the whole time." "I protected our family legacy," Margaret said, but her voice had lost its command. She sounded almost pleading now. "That girl had nothing to offer you, Raphael. No connections, no money, no lineage. The Ferreira marriage would have guaranteed our position for generations." "I don't care about our position," Raphael screamed. "I don't care about the damn legacy. I cared about Laura. I loved her. I mourned her. And I have children, Mum. Children I never held. Birthdays I never celebrated. First words I never heard. You didn't just steal from me. You stole from them." He gestured toward Pedro and Lucas, who were watching the adult storm with wide, uncertain eyes. Laura knelt between her sons, pulling them close. "It's okay," she murmured. "It's okay." "Is he the bad man?" Pedro asked Raphael, his small voice slicing through the noise. The question, so innocent, yet so devastating, made Raphael flinch like he'd been hit. "No, love," Laura said gently, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's not a bad man. He's just a man who was deceived. He is your father, and he didn't know about you. But none of this is your fault, or his. The blame belongs to someone else entirely." Her gaze locked on Margaret as she said the last part, eyes like steel. Margaret's face had gone from red with fury to grey, and for the first time, she seemed to realize she had truly lost. The guests weren't looking at Laura with contempt. They were looking at Margaret with disgust. The phones recording weren't capturing a gold digger crashing a wedding. They were documenting a grandmother who hid her own grandchildren to preserve a business deal. An elderly woman, in an elaborate hat, stood up. "Shame on you, Margaret," she said, voice carrying. "That woman had the dignity to raise those boys alone while you played power games. You should be on your knees thanking her for not demanding a single cent from you." Others murmured in agreement. The tide had turned completely. "I'm leaving now," Laura announced, standing and taking her son's hands again. "I came because I was invited, and I stayed long enough to make sure the truth was told. Pedro, Lucas, say goodbye." "Bye," the boys sang obediently. "Wait," Raphael said desperately, reaching out. "Laura, please, don't take them yet. I need..." Laura turned back, her expression softening only slightly. "My number hasn't changed in 3 years, Raphael. If you want to be part of their lives, call me. We'll talk. But on my terms, not your mother's. Am I clear?" "Crystal," Raphael said immediately. "I'll call. Tomorrow. Today. Whenever you want. Just, please, don't disappear again." "I won't disappear," Laura promised. "But whether you'll be in their lives or not is entirely up to you now. Choose better than you did 3 years ago." With that, Laura turned and walked back down the aisle, her sons beside her, head held high. Behind her, she left chaos, a cancelled wedding, a shattered family, and a social media storm that would dominate headlines for weeks. As she reached her car, Laura allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Margaret Almeida had invited her to witness a triumph. Instead, she was forced to witness her own downfall. Sometimes, Laura thought as she buckled the boys into their car seats. Karma doesn't need any help. It just needs an invitation. The fallout from the wedding that never happened spread through the city's social circles like wildfire through dry brush. By the time Laura reached her apartment complex, her phone was already exploding with calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Reporters, no doubt, and messages from friends who had seen the confrontation videos online. She turned the phone off and focused on her boys. The drive home had been quiet, Pedro and Lucas sensing their mother's emotional state and responding with the intuitive silence children sometimes show. Once inside the apartment, Laura helped them out of their tiny suits and into comfortable clothes. She made grilled cheese sandwiches and let them watch cartoons, needing the mundane comfort of routine to anchor herself after the intensity of the day. Only after the boys were fed and playing with their blocks did Laura finally sink onto the couch and process what had happened. Her hands trembled, the adrenaline fading, and tears stung her eyes. For 3 years, she had been angry at Raphael, convinced he had simply chosen money over love. Learning that Margaret had actively sabotaged her attempts to reach him, that she had known about the pregnancy all along, shifted something fundamental in Laura's understanding of the past. The apartment buzzer rang, making her jump. She wasn't expecting anyone, and she certainly wasn't in the mood for reporters. Laura approached the intercom cautiously. "Yes? Laura, it's Raphael, please. I know I don't have the right to ask, but can we talk? Just for a few minutes." Laura's finger hovered over the button. Every protective instinct screamed to send him away, to make him wait, to make him suffer even a fraction of what she had suffered. But she thought of Pedro and Lucas, how they had stared at their father with such curiosity. And she pressed the button to unlock the building door. She opened the apartment door and waited, listening to his footsteps climbing the stairs. When Raphael appeared in the hallway, he looked nothing like the polished groom from hours earlier. His bow tie was loosened, his jacket was gone, and his hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it over and over. His eyes were red. Raphael stopped a few steps from the doorway, as if afraid to get closer without permission. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me in." Laura leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You have 10 minutes. Then the boys go to bed and you leave." "Understood." Raphael nodded. Can I see them?" "They're playing in the living room," Laura said, stepping aside to let him in. "But Raphael, if you upset them, if you make them cry or feel scared, you're out." "I won't," he promised. Laura led him into the small living room. It was nothing like the mansion he grew up in. No priceless art or marble floors, just a comfortable couch, a worn rug, and toys scattered in organized chaos. Pedro and Lucas looked up, their identical faces opening into matching surprise. "It's the crying man," Lucas announced to his brother. "He's not crying right now," Pedro observed with brutal child honesty. Raphael laughed, but it came out more like a sob. He sat down on the floor, cross-legged, making himself smaller and less intimidating. "Hi guys," he said softly. "I'm Raphael. But if you want, you can call me Dad. Maybe not now. Maybe when you're ready." "What's a dad?" Pedro asked, genuinely curious. Laura felt her heart crack a little. She had explained they had a father somewhere, that he didn't know about them, but they didn't really understand the concept. "A dad is—" Raphael swallowed hard, searching for words a 4-year-old could understand. "A dad is someone who loves you and takes care of you and plays with you. Like a mommy, but different. We have a grandpa," Lucas offered. "He plays chess with us." "That's wonderful," Raphael said. "Grandpas are great. Dads are like that too." He looked up at Laura, eyes pleading. Can I show them something?" Laura nodded slowly. Raphael pulled out his phone and scrolled until he found what he was looking for. Then he turned the screen toward the boys. "This is a picture of me when I was your age," he said. Pedro and Lucas leaned in, eyes wide. "You look like us," Pedro exclaimed. "Or we look like you," Lucas added thoughtfully. "Exactly," Raphael said, voice thick. "Because I'm your dad. We have the same nose and the same eyes, and probably the same favorite color." "What's your favorite color?" the boys asked at the same time. "Blue," Raphael said, "like the ocean." "Ours is red," they announced in unison. "Like fire trucks." Raphael laughed, genuine and warm this time. "Well, that's okay. Parents and kids don't have to like all the same things." "Can you build blocks with us?" Lucas asked suddenly, holding out a wooden block. "If your mum says it's okay." Raphael looked at Laura. Laura found herself nodding. Then she sat on the couch to watch as Raphael joined his sons on the floor, helping them build an elaborate tower that would inevitably be knocked down and rebuilt. It was such a simple scene, almost domestic, and yet it felt monumental. For 20 minutes, Laura watched the three of them play. Raphael was surprisingly good with them, patient when they argued over blocks, excited about their ideas, gentle when the tower fell. Eventually, Laura cleared her throat. "Bedtime, boys. Bath and teeth, let's go." The twins grumbled, but obeyed, running off. Pedro paused, then walked back to Raphael and tapped his shoulder with a tiny hand. "You can come back," he announced, "if you want." "I want to," Raphael said, voice breaking. "More than anything." Laura took the boys to the bathroom, starting their bedtime routine while Raphael waited in the living room. When she returned, he stood near the window, staring at the city lights. "Thank you," he said without turning, "for letting me see them. For not shutting me out completely after what my family did to you." Laura sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "I didn't do it for you," she said honestly. "I did it for them. Every child deserves to know their father if that father wants to know them. The question is, Raphael, do you really want this? Or will you run back to your mother and your inheritance the first time things get hard?" Raphael turned to face her, and his expression was more serious than Laura had ever seen. "I'm done with my mother," he said flatly. "Done. She's not in my life anymore, and she will never be in theirs. As for my inheritance," he shrugged, "I don't care anymore. Money means nothing if it comes with strings attached by someone like her. My father died when I was young, and I let my mother fill that void with control and manipulation. I can see it now. But I'm 30, Laura. I have a business degree and 2 working hands. I'll figure it out." Laura studied him, trying to decide if he meant it, or if he was just caught in the emotion of the moment. "And Camilla?" "It's over," Raphael said. "We talked after you left. She's a good person, and she deserves more than I could give her. The truth is, I never loved her the way I loved you. My mother arranged it. Camilla's father saw the business advantage, and I agreed, because it was easier than fighting. I convinced myself it was enough. But seeing you today, seeing our sons, Laura, I was a coward." "You were manipulated," Laura corrected. "There's a difference. But what matters now is what happens next." "I don't expect you to forgive me," Raphael said quickly. "I don't expect us to pick up where we left off. But I want to be a father to Pedro and Lucas. I want to learn their favorite foods and their bedtime schedules and what makes them laugh. I want to be there for school plays and scraped knees and terrible drawings they make me hang on my fridge. I want everything I missed, and I want to make sure I don't miss anything ever again." Tears threatened again in Laura's eyes. For 3 years, she had dreamed of hearing Raphael say those words, dreamed of him fighting for them. But she had also built walls around her heart, and they didn't fall easily. "We'll start slow," she said finally. "Supervised visits here at first. You can come a few times a week, spend time with them, maybe help with bedtime. If that goes well, we'll increase it. But Raphael, if you hurt them, if you disappoint them, there won't be a second chance. Understood, Raphael said immediately. I won't disappoint them. And Laura, I won't disappoint you either. Not again. Before Laura could respond, her phone, which she had, turned back on, started ringing. She glanced at the screen, and her stomach dropped. It was a number she recognized, Margaret Almeida's personal line. Don't answer, Raphael said instantly. She'll just try to manipulate this. Laura hesitated, then answered on speaker. Hello, Margaret. Margaret's voice sounded different now, stripped of its usual command. Miss Santos. Laura, please, we need to talk. About what exactly? Laura asked coldly. About how you hid my grandchildren from me? About how you lied to your son repeatedly? About how you tried to destroy my life because I wasn't good enough for your family? There was a long silence. I did what I thought was necessary, Margaret said at last, voice unsteady. I was protecting my son. You were protecting your pride, Laura shot back, and your social status, and your business mergers. This was never about protecting Raphael. If it was, you would have told him about his children. You would have helped us. Instead, you chose lies and manipulation. And now you've lost everything. Your son won't speak to you. Your arranged marriage is ruined. Your reputation is destroyed. And your grandchildren, Margaret, will never meet you. Not while I'm alive. You can't do that, Margaret said, desperation creeping into her voice. They're my grandchildren. I have rights. You have no rights, Laura said, each word sharp as glass. You gave up those rights the moment you decided money mattered more than family. The moment you decided your image mattered more than your son's happiness. You made your choices, Margaret. Now live with them. Laura, please, Margaret pleaded. I made mistakes. I can see that now. But they're my family. They're my blood. Let me meet them. Let me make it right. Blood doesn't make a family, Laura said calmly. Love does. Care does. Showing up does. And you chose not to show up. You chose lies and manipulation. So no, Margaret. You will not meet them. You will not be in their lives. And if you try to come near them, if you try to contact us again, I'll go to the police with every piece of documentation I have. Bribing hospital employees is a crime, Margaret. Accessing medical records without permission is a crime. You may have money and power, but you're not above the law. Laura, Margaret tried again. Goodbye, Margaret, Laura said, and hung up. She looked at Raphael, who was watching her with a mix of sadness and relief. Are you okay with that? She asked. Cutting her off completely? More than okay, Raphael said firmly. She made her bed. Now she can lie in it. And Laura, thank you. For protecting them. For being strong when I wasn't. In the weeks that followed, Raphael became part of Pedro and Lucas's life with a dedication that surprised even Laura. He showed up 3 times a week exactly when he promised, always with his hands, full of books to read or games to play. He learned that Pedro loved dinosaurs and Lucas adored rockets. He learned that both of them hated broccoli but loved carrots, that they slept better with a nightlight on, that Lucas was chattier in the morning while Pedro stayed grumpy until breakfast. Raphael was there for their first day of school, taking hundreds of photos of his sons with backpacks too big for their tiny shoulders. He was there when Pedro fell at the playground and needed 3 stitches, holding his hand while he cried. He was there when Lucas had nightmares, soothing him back to sleep with stories from Raphael's own childhood. And slowly, very slowly, something began to shift between Laura and Raphael too. It wasn't the intense, naive love they shared when they were younger. It was something deeper, something steadier, built on honesty, effort, and the small intimacies of raising children together. One night, 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Raphael came to the apartment with news. "I got a job," he announced, face glowing. "Corporate architecture. It's not glamorous, and it definitely doesn't pay what I was used to, but it's mine. I got it on my own, without the Almeida name, without my mother's connections. Just me and my portfolio." Pride swelled in Laura's chest. "That's amazing, Raphael. The boys are going to be so proud." "Speaking of the boys," Raphael said, suddenly nervous, "I was thinking, if you're comfortable with it, maybe we could talk about me having some time alone with them. Nothing big yet. Maybe taking them to the park on Saturdays, or the zoo." Laura considered. 6 months earlier, the idea would have been unthinkable, but Raphael had proven himself again and again. He showed up. He followed through. He loved their sons fiercely and without conditions. "I think we can try," she said finally. "Start with a few hours and see how it goes." Raphael's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning, and he pulled Laura into an impulsive hug. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you for giving me this chance, for letting me be their father.